Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, John. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, thank you. And I want to thank you all for coming out. We are, as I told the folks with whom I started my day today, actually getting together to celebrate the 4th of July in the way that I think the founders most especially intended. And I'm not saying anything disparaging of cookouts and picnics and parties and other kinds of things and gatherings for fireworks. All of this was, I am sure, anticipated. But the sense of what they really wanted us to be doing on this day, you can actually get if you reflect for a moment on why it is and what it is that we celebrate on July the 4th. Because if you ask that question, especially these days of the talking heads and the people who pretend to be our pundits, they would tell you that we are celebrating the independence of the United States. We are celebrating the day America became independent of Great Britain. Actually, we're not. The actual resolution by which the Congress, Second Continental Congress, severed ties with Great Britain, the resolution that actually had those words in it whereby the colonies declared themselves of right to be separate and independent states, was approved on the 2nd of July. And if we were celebrating the act whereby the ties were severed, then we would celebrate on July 2nd, not July 4th. What happened on July 4th was that the Congress approved and they signed the Declaration of Independence, the document that was transmitted through history. So what were they recommending when they set the date on July the 4th? They were recommending not that we should just dance about in celebration of an action, but that we should every year, every time we did it, be reminded by our leaders and by our own actions and activities of the truths that make us free, the truths that were articulated in that great document. And I think as we gather here today, we also, unfortunately, and it may prove tragically, gather in a context that is not at all unlike the context in which those of the founding generation gathered when they considered the Declaration of Independence in the first place. I know now, and it is even popular at some of the Tea Party events for certain folks to act as if they came together and they were all excited and unhappy because they were being placed under an oppressive burden of taxation by the nasty, bad old British government, and they were rising up to protect their pocketbooks and their wallets against the depredations of the tyrants who were trying to destroy their livelihood and so forth. So, y'all, not quite. You know why not quite? Well, I'll tell you what. If you compare the burden of taxation under which we live today with the burden of taxation that was represented by the impositions that the British government were making with the tea tax and other excise taxes, guess who turns out to be the tax slaves? Guess who turns out to be laboring under an onerous burden of taxation that would, on material grounds, have had the founding generation rising up in rebellion long before now? We are. We are. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So answer the question though. Since they had, in that respect, a much easier time of it than we did, what, do you think they were that sensitive? I don't think so. These were people who were not that far from the roots of those and still had in their midst in various ways folks who were going out into a hardy wilderness that didn't offer them much that they didn't have to eke out with every ounce of their strength and their effort and their labor. These were folks who were descended not that far from people who had come over from Europe, from comfortable circumstances and rich livelihoods, in order to battle against that wilderness, to establish communities that would give them the real rights of conscience and freedom which prosperity can never give. So, in that same spirit that they had come to the New World, seeking a place in which they could live, not in comfort, but in freedom. So they rose up in that day when our great Declaration of Independence was declared, not because they intended to protect their pocketbooks, but because they were determined to establish and protect their liberty, then and for all time. And I would like to tell you that I deeply believe, and I have found as I have gone to some of the Tea Party events around April 15th, as we've been working back and forth with folks, I believe that the spirit of our time, contrary to what the pundits and even some of the folks who think they're going to gain political advantage from the Tea Party movement, they think, well, we'll just get out there and we'll talk to them about the money and the money and the money and the money. And I'll tell you what, I think most Americans understand that, yes, it's bad to spend us into ruin. It's bad to burden future generations with debt that shall never be repaid. It's bad to turn this country's future over to the Chinese government or any other because we are so indebted to that government on account of our spendthrift ways. That's bad. Okay? It's bad to give the government control over your businesses and the right, I don't know where they got it, to take over private corporations. You see that in the Constitution somewhere? I do not find that right in the Constitution. I cannot understand, and on the day when some people were standing up and applauding the possibility that a president, so-called, of the United States was going to be firing the president of General Motors, I'm thinking to myself, where on earth in the Constitution does any official of the federal government get the right to decide what shall happen in a private corporation in this country? Some people may want us to believe that this pattern of events is just a threat to our livelihood, a threat to our wealth. But you know what you play into the hands of? Then if somebody comes along and says, oh no, that's not true. If we continue this pattern of behavior, we're going to put more money in your pockets. Is that okay? All you have to do is turn over more power to us. Give us control of your whole banking system and everything will be okay. We'll give you money. Give us control of all of your businesses and everything will be okay because we'll give you jobs. You see what I mean? Give us control of your health care system and everything will be okay because everybody will be healthy. Okay? There's just one problem with this, y'all. If you read what isn't even the fine print, but what is the clear and evident corollary of everything they're saying, they're not saying, give us the power, we're going to do all these wonderful things for you. They remind me, in fact, of a little nostrum that, I think he was mentioned today, Harvey C. Mansfield, who was, among other things, an expert on Machiavelli. And I think that there's no harm in being an expert on Machiavelli so long as you read him as a warning rather than as an instructor. But leave that aside. He was talking about the ways that Machiavelli recommended to people who wanted to achieve power. If you're trying to get power and control from people, and in particular, if you think that you need that power in order to do away with them because they're in your way. I remember one lecture in which he looked at the class and said, well, what Machiavelli is saying here is, don't say, give me your gun, I want to kill you. Just say, give me your gun. Okay? Now, does that remind you of anything? Because it reminds me of something. It reminds me of all the politicians we have today. Reminds me, including the present occupant of the White House and the faction that he represents, coming to us and saying, just give us the power. Give us the banks. Give us the control of the corporations. Give us the control of the health care system. Give us the power. Give us the unrestrained, unchecked opportunity, and we will do wonderful things for you. And I'm listening to myself saying, I think what you're really suggesting is that we ought to give you the power and the control once you get it. Who's going to stop you from using it to destroy us?